for hybrid communities powered by AI. So we're excited to hear from these three entrepreneurs this evening. And firstly, I am going to welcome Charlene Armour to our screens. Charlene, delighted
Hello,
to be
everybody.
with us today. How are you?
I'm not too bad, coming direct to you from a very wet Tyrone. Yeah, it's all good. Excited to talk sales.
So we'll just dive in. Charlene, we've been
Sure.
chatting and we know that there's lots and lots of different questions that we could go through. But I wanted to start off by just saying, could you give us a brief intro to your journey and a quick overview of when and why you started Armour?
Sure, of course. So I started Armour in 2019 with the common goal of, because I worked as a freelance consultant for quite some time, the problem we discovered was that a lot of companies didn't know what they didn't know, as in they didn't have the right information and were using third-party consultants in order to fill that gap. The difficulty with that was that they were all too often getting generic documentation for consultative prices. So I set out in a way to, and here comes a buzzword, to disrupt myself, essentially, to build a platform that would mean companies could take control of their systems, particularly with ISO standards and legal compliance. And that's where Armour come from. It also happens to be my surname. I just want to add in there that I don't have that big of an ego that I called it after myself. It's after the word Armour, the noun. So we started in 2019. Our first launch was in May 2020, which was pretty much the peak of the pandemic and probably one of the most difficult time to launch a product, but we launched it anyway. And from that, then we obtained feedback, and there was a continual feedback loop. We had some sales, and it was sales feedback, and then we reiterated and come out with our most recent product. Well, we've two, which is the legal product and the ISO gap analysis product.
Brilliant. So I know we're just going to dive straight in because it is kind of a focus kind of on sales, and you mentioned sales there, and Charlene, you are a solo founder, you've just set up in the last 6 months. So for other solo founders kind of on the call, how should a solo founder divide their time between sales and marketing?
So I can tell you how I do it now. Because everything else I tried didn't work. I was very scant with my time, and I was doing a little bit, doing little bits and pieces here and there and everywhere, and there was absolutely no structure to it. So when it's literally all hands on deck with everything within the business, you have to kind of really structure your time. So what I done was I structure my mornings every morning between 9 and 1, and that focuses on sales and marketing. Now, I will caveat that by saying that I've outsourced pretty much all the administration tasks that come with marketing, not sales, but marketing. So I'm spending most of my time pretty much Monday through Friday on sales and marketing because it's so important.
And, you did say, your background isn't technical.
No.
And your background is, and you are an ISO legal consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And you're selling a technical product. So can you sell a technical product without being technical yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in my opinion, there's far too much emphasis on the tech and the product and less on the value that the product actually brings. So I think the best person to sell the product is the person that knows the market and knows the value and knows the industry is the best person. So I have brought on a CTO now, but he couldn't sell the product the way I could because he doesn't know the industry. And the truth is, there's many companies out there build really cool products, but no one's willing to pay for it because it doesn't serve the purpose.
And you touched on something there around, you brought on someone for sales, but as a founder, how important did you think it was to head up sales initially?
Oh, sorry. No, I have a CTO who deals with all the technical stuff. I was just saying he couldn't sell.
Oh, sorry. He couldn't
sorry.
Sell.
Yeah, no. Oh, it's. I mean, it's so important. As the CEO of the company, I have to have a very in-depth understanding of pretty much everything that goes on. And the reason that the product exists today is because of my knowledge of the market, and that in turn it brings comfort to my customers, because a lot of them know when they ask me a question with regards to ISO standards that they're getting a truthful, honest answer, and not just a sales pitch.
So do you think, can you be a good CEO without having sales experience?
Absolutely. I don't have any sales experience. I'm certainly not. I would never call myself a salesperson in any regard. I see it slightly different in terms of, even though it's the topic of sales, all I'm selling is a solution to a problem, and a solution that I happen to know how to fix, or a problem that I happen to know how to fix. 9 times out of 10, that's usually the CEO.
So that when you're selling that, how would you go about doing that sales process?
So I have a very, I'm a process-driven person. So I operate in a very simple sort of step-by-step way. So the first thing you have to do is you have to identify your user personas. I don't know if you've covered this in any of the other stuff, but the user personas is so important, and you have to get seriously specific with this. I was taught that if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. So my first step was to identify the personas who had the biggest problem. And once I done that, I thought, okay, well, this is my persona. Where do those people hang out? How do I access those people? How do I engage with them? And then that's kind of where the marketing and the bits and pieces come in. So that's where your SEO comes in, where your LinkedIn comes in, where your events and all that sort of stuff comes in. Then you start to think about how you reach out to them, how you contact them. The next, as a general rule of thumb, and I learned this the hard way, but as a general rule of thumb, we reach out to a particular persona 3 times. We'll reach out the first time. If there's no response the second time, if there's no response the third time, that's it. We move on to the next one, because with SaaS and selling tech products, it's a numbers game. And then what we do on a monthly basis, we review all the responses, we review all of the data. We look, okay, we contacted this person, this is what our objections were, this is what our issues were, this is the things that we done really well. And then we take that back up to the persona and modify that feedback loop to basically, what you're getting is kind of the sweeter spot. What you want to get is closer to the sweetest spot, because there's so many companies out there. Again, it comes down to your product. Give or take, the general rules might change, but that's what I spend Monday to Friday, 9 to 1 doing.
So based on that, have you any tips on how to turn, when you're talking about just your sales pipeline, any tips on how to turn a no into a not yet or a yes? Because you talked about the whole personas and
yeah. So it depends on what kind of no it is. If it's a hard no, chances are your personas, you're reaching out to the wrong people. If it's not so sure no, what you want to find out from them is, what are their objections? Why are they not buying your product? Is it something to do with, you have to find out the objections. Those objections should then feed into your marketing material. So for example, one of the objections we get is, we want to implement ISO standards. We know we have to, it's just not at the top of our pile right now. Then that feeds into a blog post, and for me to say, here's why it should be at the top of your pile. Then I send it to them. And that's kind of, you're just moving it along the pipeline and warming them up.
So Charlene, from someone whose background wasn't in sales, do you enjoy selling?
I enjoy it more now. At the very beginning, I absolutely hated it. I avoided it like the plague. I took every no personal. I done basically everything I could do, but not sell. And then what I realized was, well, there's no point building this wonderful product that nobody knows about. So I enjoy it now, but I look at it from a very different perspective. It's data collection. You're always going to get no's, you're always going to get people who will never respond to you. And something that has stuck with me, my co-founder, my CTO, has worked for Snapchat, and he said Snapchat's hit rate was, for every 100 emails you send out, if you get engagement from 2, you're in a really good place. And I hold that very close, because if there's 98 people saying no to me, then that I use that to tweak. So yeah, do I enjoy it a wee bit more now? At the start I hated it. In fact, I think my very first conversation was with you, Mary. I don't know if you remember this, because I remember you said to me, you need to get out in front of it. And I used
of course.
After that, that was 3 years ago, and I used every excuse I could. I hid behind the tech. Yeah. And it took me a wee while to kind of realize that, look, we're all in the same, as long as we're solving a problem, you know, people will come. It just is perseverance. And data, if you think of it as data, the no's don't really sting so much.
And we talked earlier on, Mary mentioned to our cohort this morning, it's more about focusing on selling the benefits, not the features.
Absolutely
important as well. So then for first timers, you know, do you think they should invest in sales training, or do you think it's a case of trial and error, you know, just getting out there and getting started? I know I
started with kind of very basics training, which, well, to be honest, I started more with marketing training, because my background in selling, as it were, was as a consultant, and I was moving into a very different field in terms of SaaS. So I done a marketing course, but to be honest with you, I kind of see a lot of these things as another thing to hide behind. You just got to get out there. You just got to start, you know, if you understand the value of what your product brings and the problem that it solves, splash that everywhere and start from there and just keep learning. So to answer your question, does anyone need it? No. I looked at marketing because it was just something that I wasn't really that good at, and at a high volume level.
Okay. But I suppose, you know, looking at it and they may not need it, but it may be useful in order to.
Yeah, I guess it depends. It's not a do or die. For me, I had to have a better understanding how to sell a SaaS product as opposed to selling consultancy, because they're two different things. So by doing the marketing, that kind of tapped into the sales stuff, and give me a starting point where we talked about, you know, personas and about, you know, value proposition and all that sort of stuff. And that then, you know, sales feeds into marketing and marketing feeds into sales. It's a constant loop. And that definitely was a good starting point for me, for sure.
Sure. And I know that I'm just conscious of time, so I want to leave. Is there any one tip that maybe, you know, for those co-founders or those founders that are on the call this evening that are just starting out in their journey, you know, a tip around kind of sales, you know, about getting over that fear of sales that you would leave them with? Yes,
it's data collection. It's nothing more, nothing less. If you collect the data, you measure the data, you'll get another step to the sweet spot of where your sales come from. Just to kind of to reiterate on that, we've companies coming to us from South Africa. They're not even on our profile, but they've come to us, and before we know it, we might end up, that might be our core market. So just start. Don't hide behind anything. It's data collection, measure everything, and yeah, just measure it and improve it. So
brilliant. And as you said, you didn't come from a sales background, and you're now selling into 3 different markets in 6 months. So it is something that can be learned.
Yeah, it's this. Yeah, you'll make mistakes, but the important part is to gather the data from those mistakes and use that data. You know, your data is priceless. Plus, if you don't do anything with that data, it's useless.
Brilliant, Charlene. Thank you so much. Don't go away, because as I mentioned, we'd like to bring you back for Q&A at the end. And again, people use the chat as much as possible. Charlene's on the call, so she's happy to answer any questions via chat. And I am now delighted to welcome Jenny Timney to your screens.
Hi there.
Hi, Jenny. I'm just going to pin that 2 seconds. Oh. Hi. So for those of you who joined a bit later, Jenny has a series